Welcome back to episode number 21 of our podcast series, Building Better Relationships in Construction. This episode is based on the book Building Better Relationships, a guide to enhancing the customer experience for home builders, remodelers, and construction managers by Paul Schwinghammer. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sabrina. Today we're pulling from Paul's chapter on anticipating problems and setting expectations. Lots to dig into here, and we'll try to keep it conversational and practical.
Right. So Paul opens with a simple but powerful idea. Anticipate problems before they happen. Don't wait for surprises. When you can see potential issues coming, you can talk about them early. And that completely changes the dynamic with your client.
Exactly. Think of yourself as a navigator, someone watching for storm clouds. If you point them out early, the client doesn't feel blindsided later. Instead of, what happened? It becomes, okay, we saw it, we talked about it, here's the plan. That's huge for trust.
There's a great example Paul uses about septic systems. A client casually says they might handle the septic separately, maybe hire another contractor or do parts themselves. If you ignore that comment, it can come back as a surprise. Later, the client expects you to manage bills or pay fees, and then you've got friction.
Right. So Paul's recommendation is to name that possibility right away. Say something like, I hear you might handle the septic yourself. If you keep it in the contract but want us to manage payments, we'll need to add a 15% processing fee because of the extra admin work. Want me to include that option in the agreement? Short, clear, and honest.
That example shows how anticipation removes ambiguity. The client knows the cost and the consequence up front. No mystery fees, no hurt feelings, and even if the client decides to do it themselves, the fact you raised it makes you look proactive and trustworthy.
There's a broader lesson there that applies outside construction too. Paul points to retail. If a store excludes TVs from a sale but there's no sign, customers feel cheated. The frustration isn't about the policy. It's about the lack of clear communication.
So true. A simple sign, a short sentence, a heads up, those small acts of communication prevent a lot of dissatisfaction. In construction, the complexity is higher, so the payoff from anticipating is bigger.
Let's talk about change orders or last-minute requests. Paul talks about window changes during trim stage. A client asks to swap a window, and it sounds like a small request, until you factor in rework, schedule delays, and hidden costs.
Instead of just quoting a price, Paul suggests explaining the ripple effects. Changing this window now could require significant rework and may cost more. I want you to know that before you decide. That little pause, that honest framing sets expectations.
It does a few things. It sets realistic cost and schedule expectations, reduces future disappointment, and demonstrates you care about their experience, not just the quick sale. It also moves the conversation from reactive to collaborative.
And that matters. When a client hears you thinking through consequences, they start treating you like a partner. They also start to expect transparency as the norm.
Paul calls this expectation setting a strategic deposit in the relationship bank account. I love that phrasing. Each time you anticipate a problem and communicate it clearly, you're building trust, like putting money in an account.
Yes, and that deposit pays dividends when real problems happen. You've already established credibility. Clients are more likely to accept inconvenient news because they've seen you be honest before.
It also reduces firefighting. If you've mapped out likely issues, you can build contingencies into the plan. So when things go sideways, because they will, you're not improvising in front of a client. You're executing a known plan.
There's also the team and culture angle Paul highlights. When leaders anticipate and communicate, subs and crews pick up that mindset. It becomes the way you operate. Transparency trickles down.
Which is essential. Imagine a field crew that keeps surprises to themselves. The office gets blindsided. But if the culture is to raise potential problems early, the project runs smoother.
Let's give a couple of quick, practical phrases people can use on the job. Paul encourages language that's matter-of-fact and kind. For example, I want to flag something that could affect schedule and cost. Or, a heads up. If we change this now, here's what it will do to timeline and budget.
Another one. I'm noting that you might want to handle X separately. If you want us to administer it later, there's typically an administrative fee. Would you like that option added to the contract? Short, clear, and creates a decision point.
And when you don't know the full outcome yet, say so. I don't have the exact number today, but I want to flag the potential for extra cost and give you a ballpark. Clients appreciate honesty over certainty when certainty isn't possible.
Paul also reminds us that expectation setting isn't just about avoiding negative surprises. It strengthens brand reputation. Clients who experience that level of candor are more likely to refer you, come back for future work, and speak positively about your business.
There's a loyalty component. People don't just remember that the job finished. They remember how they felt during the process. Did they feel informed, respected, heard? Those feelings drive repeat business.
Another practical point: document these conversations. If you've anticipated a problem and offered options, capture that in writing, an email, a note in the project management system, so everyone has the same reference.
Good point. Documentation prevents memory-based conflicts later. If it's written, it becomes part of the project's roadmap.
One more behavioral tip from Paul: train your team to look for ambiguous statements. Clients will often speak hypothetically, "We might want to do X." Teach your team to follow up with clarifying questions. If you mean to keep that in the scope but want us to manage it, would you want us to add our processing fee to cover administration? That small follow-up avoids the "we assumed" problem.
To sum up, anticipation, clarity, documentation, and a culture of transparency. Those are the core actions Paul recommends. They're deceptively simple, but they require discipline.
Discipline, and a willingness to have those slightly awkward upfront conversations. People avoid them because they worry about scaring clients off. But Paul argues the opposite. Clients prefer honesty. They'd rather know the truth than be surprised.
Let's be real. This isn't just about protecting margins. It's also emotional labor. When you anticipate and explain, you're managing the client's emotional experience. You're reducing stress for them. That's part of customer service.
And that emotional management is a differentiator. Most builders focus on schedules and specs. Those who also manage feelings and expectations stand out.
Nearing the end here, one practical checklist for listeners to use on their next project. 1. Ask clarifying questions when clients make hypothetical statements. 2. Offer options with clear trade-offs. 3. Put potential fees or consequences in writing. 4. Train your team to flag ambiguities. 5. Celebrate the relationship deposits when you do this well.
That's a useful list. And remember, this approach isn't about being defensive. It's about being service-oriented. It's saying, we see what could go wrong, we'll help you decide, and we'll be transparent about costs and time.
Before we close, Sabrina, I know you wanted to include Paul's availability note for listeners.
Yes. Remember, you can purchase your copy of the groundbreaking book, Building Better Relationships, a guide to enhancing the customer experience for home builders, remodelers, and construction managers by author Paul Schwinghammer on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in multiple formats.
Great. Final thought, your job really isn't about you. It's about your client's experience. Anticipate problems, set expectations, and you'll build stronger relationships and smoother projects.
That's it for episode 21. Thanks for listening. If you found this useful, tell a colleague and let us know what you want us to cover next.
See you next time. And remember to check out Paul's book for more practical guidance.
Bye for now.